Hey folks, welcome back to Mark Kelly Farm. Got some new arrivals here on the farm today. We've got some bees. They've all kind of gone to bed for now. There's a few of them still coming in and out. They were real active earlier. But I used to be a beekeeper out in California, an amateur beekeeper. I didn't do it as a business. But I kept bees in my yard. I would go collect swarms. When everybody would have a swarm in their yard, they'd give me a call. And if you're wanting to get into beekeeping, that's a very good way to get it. Very inexpensive. So all you got to do is buy your hardware, which would be the boxes. But a package of bees will cost you about $120, $130. So if you can get swarms, that's a cheap way to get your bees. And I would get 2 to 3 calls a week sometimes during like March, April in California, swarm season. So that's when they're all swarming. And they swarm because they run out of room wherever they're at. So they'll create a new queen. The old queen will take off with some bees that are loyal to her, and they'll go swarm and try to find a new home. But if you stay on top of your bees and make sure they got plenty of room, sometimes they won't swarm. Sometimes they still will. You never can tell. But that's a good way to get bees. Call your local ag extension and put your name in with them, because they're the ones that 911 calls whenever they have a bee call, because people call 911 when they get a swarm of bees. But they'll get a hold of you and you can go catch that swarm. I learned everything I know about bees, mostly catching swarms, from a guy on YouTube called JP the Bee Man. And if you're interested in catching swarms, I highly recommend his videos. He's a master at that. And he very rarely even wears a bee suit. He does it just all unprotected. And he's at one with the bees and they leave him alone. The bees, I think, can sense if you're scared of them, because I've never shown fear to them and they've always been real nice to me and I've never had a problem. As long as you're doing things slowly and correctly and not, smashing bees and stuff like that, they'll just go on about their business. But dandelions and stuff growing out here. We're going to have the garden going real soon, so we were interested in getting some pollination going on out there, because we'll get a lot better crop if we got bees to pollinate. And there's not a lot of bees running around out here. We see very few. We saw some bumblebees and stuff, so it's real important that we have bees out here to do our pollinating. And we're going to have a lot more flowers and stuff too. Kelly planted a bunch of wildflowers and sunflowers along the side of the barn out here. And some of this stuff out here is going to be blooming soon. So they'll have plenty to eat. They've already found the dog's water dish. But beekeeping is fun stuff. I try to let the bees have their honey for the winter. Out in California, I didn't harvest any honey. I've only taken honey from hives that were either the bees left or I lost them over the winter, and their honey was still in the box, so I harvested it. It's super good. So I've never overwintered bees in a freezing cold climate, but people are doing it. People with bees in Alaska and Canada and everywhere else that you can imagine, and they're overwintering the bees, but I didn't know how. So I contacted my local bee guy here in town, and pretty big operation. He sells honey to like 90 different stores here in Nebraska, and I was out at his place today getting these bees, and he's got quite an extensive honey extraction building. Got some big machinery in it. I've never seen an operation so big. But I got to talking to him about overwintering bees in a cold climate, and he says, I wouldn't know. I overwinter my bees in California. So he takes all his bees out there late January for the almond blossoms. Almond blossoms start showing up around the first part of February. So they do all the almonds out there, and then after they come out of the almonds, they put them out and get wildflowers out in pastures and rolling hills and stuff. And he said his bees are just now in May, last part of May, first part of June, coming back to Nebraska. So he doesn't overwinter his bees here, but he did say that there's people that do it. So it can be done. So I'm going to be picking his brain, and I'm a member of a couple bee groups. And that's another good resource. If you get onto bee groups, there's very helpful people on there that are more than happy to advise you and how to do stuff. Just be careful. Like anything, though, any board like that, 10 people give you answers, you're going to get 10 different answers. So you pretty much, like anything else, even here on YouTube, you got to wade through stuff and see what bit works best for you. So we're going to try to overwinter these bees, and then the guy told me when I'm ready to put supers on these boxes, what you see here is basically 2 brood chambers. So the queen will go into those brood chambers and she'll lay eggs in both of those boxes. They overwintered in one box. He had some spare bees out behind the barn that just overwintered here, so it can be done. So when I'm ready for a super, which is boxes above those 2, we take those lids off and we put a queen excluder on those boxes to keep the queen out of the super, because you don't want eggs and all that stuff up in the honey chamber. So he said when it's time to put those on, he's going to provide me with the supers and the frames that don't have the plastic foundation, so we can make comb honey. So the bees will build their own foundation and their own comb. They always build their own comb. Sometimes we provide the foundation, of course. But he said he'll buy that from me, or we can trade for honey. So either way, that's going to be cool. And he said he'd do that for me. So a lot of bartering goes on back here. And we're also going to trade some work, because since I know how to a little bit about bees and have worked bees before, he said whenever he needs help, I told him to feel free to call me and I'll come help him out, and we can trade labor or whatever. He's got quite an operation, like I said, so it takes quite a few people to run that once he gets it going. Remember I told you before how the bees had found Brandy's outside water dish. You need to provide something for the bees to land on so they don't drown. If you ever had a swimming pool, you notice all the dead bees because they're trying to cling to the side and get some water. So I always put something in the water dishes around when I have bees so the bees can land on it and crawl down and get water. So that's the purpose of that broken piece of brick there. Gives them a little ramp to go up and down on. So if you want bees, they're a good thing for your property, and it's a good thing to conserve the bees, because a lot of people say the bees are becoming extinct. I don't believe that for a minute, because nature always overcomes somehow, it seems like. But I do everything I can to save the bees. That's why I used to go get swarms and rescue them and give them a good home. But like I said, if you're interested in bees, it's a cheap way to get them is to go get swarms. I had empty boxes in my yard, and the bees just showed up in them. I had 2 different hives that some swarms that were out roaming around looking for a home made a home in 2 empty boxes that I had. So if you've got empty boxes laying around with wax that has had bees on it before, or a little honey in it or something, they'll show up and they'll use it. So wish me luck. We're going to try to overwinter these bees this winter and try to keep these 2 hives going. So if you got any questions or comments, especially if you're a cold weather beekeeper, I'll take all the help I can get. Hey, we'll see you next time on Mark Kelly Farms. Bye.